the biggest thing holding you back isn't your circumstances, but the story that you've been telling yourself for years. Today, we're talking about those quiet, limiting beliefs or negative thoughts we've carried and how to finally break free from them. Welcome to the Legacy Years, the podcast. I'm Kristy Osborn, your host, and I am so happy to be joined today by Yamaceeta Thompson. Welcome, Yama.
Thank you, Kristy.
We are so glad that you are here. And if you would just tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you kind of came to do what you do.
Well, I'm Yamaceeta Thompson. Most people call me Yama, so please feel free. And I am a certified belief therapist. I help people take a look at what they believe, why they believe it, and what are the effects of those beliefs, whether it be positive or maybe a little challenging or not so positive. So we just take a deep dive and really challenge what those beliefs are, and then see what it is that we could do to change some of those limiting beliefs, if not all of them, to improve quality of life.
And I am glad that we're talking about that because that is my goal on every episode is to improve people's quality of life. So I think this is a very essential topic. I think we all carry these things that we may or may not even realize that we carry. So let's just kind of dive into the questions that I have, and then you may have some other stuff that you want to share with us. But so what do you think are some of the most common false self-beliefs that you see that people carry sometimes for decades without realizing it?
An innate, it's like it's a pebble, but it's kind of like one of those, when you get a grain of sand in your shoe, and it may not be a
Yes.
lot of sand, but it's enough that you try to ignore it. You really can't, but you will ignore it and try to live with it. I call them splinters. Splinters can actually hurt more than a clean slice. It's under the skin, it can cause infection. Some of those limiting beliefs that I akin to a splinter some are common, like, I'm not enough, or something is wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them they're planted really early in life, oftentimes in childhood. But then as we grow and as we have life experiences, sometimes we add on. Sometimes they augment the limiting beliefs we already have, or a new one sets root. Some of the other ones are even physically. Some people feel I don't look good enough. I don't look good, period. I'm not happy with the way that I look. And because I'm not happy with the way that I look, I cannot have or do the things that I want to.
Mm.
And so, what I help people with is that even if sometimes people can't come to terms with their limiting beliefs when it's something that's physical. It's hard to convince someone you are beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can share so much. But if you do not meet your personal standards of beauty, can you still walk in confidence? Can you still pursue your passion? Yes, you can. You can. And so overcoming those beliefs are just like overcoming obstacles. So those are just a couple. I'm never going to be what I want to be or what I feel I can be. It's too big.
Mm.
Or I'm not loved. Nobody really loves me. No one really cares. Those are a couple other ones that are really, really common that many people face. This in this.
Yeah. And I think that what I have seen personally too is, well, I'm such and such an age, and now it's just too late, or why bother? That type of mentality. So I think it's even more difficult as we age to really seek out solutions to that. Or why should I even bother?
You are so right, and I'm glad you brought up the age or it's too late, because another limiting belief that is actually it's planted very early, but we see the fruits of it more in our later years. Is that you have sickness is mandatory almost.
Mm,
It's like, you will experience illness and sickness at some time in your life. You if your mom was sick, if your dad had diabetes, if your auntie had cancer, then okay, because of my genetics, it's happening to me, and they're just waiting for it to happen. High blood pressure, all of those things, especially when it's backed with, we may see science, we may see some statistics, and there may be the reality of, yes, this is in your family, but the truth is that the quicker that we align and believe and expect those things to happen to us, it increases the chances of it happening. So we're better off holding on to the belief of, I can be healthy, I can live a long, strong life. And even if sickness has come, don't have to stay sick.
yeah.
It doesn't have to continue.
Power of the mind.
Power of the mind. We start long time ago. It was called mind over matter. Remember, especially in athletics. It was like push, press against. It doesn't matter how you feel. And we saw some athletes, whether it's students or professionals, really get over some major obstacles just with that mindset. We've seen some victories in multiple areas of life and industries with that mindset. Well, it happens internally for us in every area of life. What you believe is what you will receive.
Yeah, for sure. So, if I can get a little personal, is there a core belief about yourself that you thought for a long time that you then overcame? And if so, how did you overcome it?
I have quite a few. Today, I feel led to share about needing more, meaning needing more education, needing more certifications, just never quite being equipped enough
Mm,
to be of great value. And the way that was combated, or how I overcame that, was in the starting to do, not waiting to accomplish the next thing. And honestly, if I can just share, to get real transparent, when I learned, when I came to the understanding that I am to help people in this way, I initially sought the traditional path. I was like, okay, I'm going to pursue my master's in counseling. And I started, and I went my first semester. It was good. The second semester rolled around and rolled around, and I was having some financial challenges. And so I couldn't afford the second semester. And I remember just kind of being there and saying, "Oh, Lord, well, I don't know what's going to happen now. I guess I'll just wait till next semester, something to open up." And when I tell you, I'm a woman of faith, and I heard very clearly, it's like, that's not the path for you. And then it was made very clear that had that path, it does work for some, but what I've called you to do, you don't need that. And I was steered in the path of the direction of the equipping and the education that I did need. It was different. It was still, I'm certified in belief therapy, and that equipped me along with some other trainings and all with what I needed to do. But what it showed me was that sometimes we have this idea of the way something has to happen in order to be reap fruit, or to do what we're supposed to do, and that is not true. Sometimes we put ourselves in these boxes. And so by starting to do, I took off, what helped too is I took off some of those blinders. I took off the lens of, it has to be this way, and it opened up a world of opportunity. And then as I would speak, just open my mouth and share, quality and value was then reflected back to me when I saw people being helped, people being healed, being invited to share with individuals, with families, with groups, with organizations. And so that solidified and confirmed for me that what you have is not just enough, it's more than enough. Because there's never anywhere that I go that I know that I pour out everything that I know or that I'm equipped with. But I do believe that whatever happens in that time is for that time, that every space is a destined space.
I love that perspective because I do think that we can get so set in, well, if this doesn't XYZ doesn't happen, and ABC wasn't meant to be, and that's not necessarily true. It's just a different way forward. So thank you for sharing that.
For sure, of course. We can, like you said, we can get so stuck in and sometimes create a rut. If I think about a car, if it's been raining, it's been, and the dirt's gotten a bit wet and it's a bit muddy, sometimes you just you end up deeper in that mud and stuck and not able to go forward. Where if you just sometimes, personally, this has happened to me. I'm just thinking about it, being stuck that way, but just turning the wheel, not trying
Mm,
to still go in that same direction, but turning the wheel and putting some effort in the other direction got me out of the mud.
yeah, that's great. It's a great metaphor. um, we think about our thoughts and how powerful those are.
Yes.
So, but it seems so much easier to have negative thoughts than to have positive thoughts, uh, even when there's no evidence maybe of the negative thought. So why do you think that is, and why do we as humans tend towards those negative thoughts versus positive thoughts?
I believe it begins very young. It begins in conditioning. And I believe that a major part of that is, especially in our culture, our Western culture, we parent from a place of fear often. We parent and trying to keep our kids from making a mistake. You're going to get hurt, expecting something to go wrong. So
Mm,
when we start off with that mindset of something going wrong is the primary seed of negativity. And then from that, if something does happen that's a challenge, or something is unfavorable that happens, we know that happens in real life, instead of seeing that the sun will shine again, that this is temporary, this is what's happening right now, but we will get out of it, it can change, we sometimes just sit in it and keep on just so it continues to
churning, yeah.
churning, perpetuate. And then what, because this went wrong, more has to go wrong. Something else is going to happen. We have those different little sayings. You've probably heard some, waiting for the next shoe to fall.
Yeah,
What can be worse, or what more can happen. We've kind of painted that picture. We don't naturally gravitate to the silver linings, or joy comes in the morning just innately. And I think it's because it doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from a place of, especially with our parenting, we know that parents love their children, most of the time. It's not coming from a place or mindset of abuse, but of protection, right?
yeah,
But it still plants that seed of something's wrong, something's going to happen, and then it just attaches to other things. We see it in the media, especially, looking at the news. The news very seldom highlights the good stuff,
yeah,
right?
that's for sure.
And so, if all you're seeing over and over again are the negative things that are happening in society, it plants fear. And out of fear comes negative thoughts and
Hmm.
expectations, being afraid that the next shooting is about to happen, and
Yeah.
and you'll be involved. um the accident, the next car accident. And I mean, if you're in Dallas and you drive on 75 or 35, sometimes the fear is justified. it could get a little crazy out there. But I do believe that that's where it comes from. I think it comes from very young, and it comes initially from a good place. But when those thoughts are not wielded in the right way, they can be lead to detrimental thought patterns.
Yeah. I heard a friend tell me one time that her dad said, you can wallow in self pity, but you only have 5 minutes. And after that, you're done. You got to move forward. And I was like, well, that's great advice. Let the child feel it for a little bit, and then that's it. We're done.
Yes, I love that. You definitely need to acknowledge emotions, acknowledge the present, because if you don't, oftentimes what you do is you pack it away, and
Yeah.
it turns into like long when we would have those area rugs and just sweep the dust up under the area rug, and eventually you have a little mound because you did not take it out. So that happens if we don't process the events in our lives. And so, for a very long time, child therapy was not popular. The only,
Right.
for decades, the only children who received therapy were children who experienced major life crises or had major behavioral challenges.
Mm,
But we know now that whether we consider it a little trauma, you know, or a big T trauma, processing how we feel and processing those emotions are very beneficial for a healthy nervous system. Because then, when we have a healthy nervous system, that promotes a healthy mental health. And then our mental health does directly affect our physical health. And
yeah.
so to be holistically healthy, yeah, we can't just package it up and put it on the side. If you need 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Now, what I would encourage parents is maybe not to be so rigid with the time stamp, because sometimes people do need a little bit more time in how they process and what they are processing. So being compassionate and sensitive to the needs, and also learning tools, because if we're going to do 5 minutes, then what type of tools and techniques have I given this child to work through their issue in those 5 minutes? Because I know when I was growing up, what I saw was a lot of times it was just time for you to go think. But if thinking, sometimes depending on the infraction,
Yeah.
depending on what you did or didn't do, thinking could help. You can process, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I was disobedient and all. But if that's a really deep, something happened that caused a really deep pain, like an emotional wound, crying for 5 minutes and then having to walk it off, then leads to just a repressed healing. And then
Yeah.
oftentimes we see that later come out in different ways.
Yeah. And I do think when you think about our generation and our parents' generation, we were raised a lot different than we raised our children. And
True.
you didn't talk about those things, and you did push it under the rug, and you did just toughen up and deal with it. And that has created a whole generation of messed up adults. So, I do think that we need some help. So what are some daily practices or maybe mindset shifts that you work through with your clients that helps break those patterns of old thinking that people could do if they're feeling some of those old hurts or old, limiting beliefs or negative thoughts that they've thought for a long time?
Uh, I like to start with building confidence and courage, because usually the things that have happened, the incidents, those adverse experiences that happened are either so deep that they are covered,
Mm-hmm.
or they are so strong that they are hard to wrangle. So because it's so hard, it's like if that anger comes from somewhere and it's just like it's just embedded, it's grown over the years, and hey, when it pops off, I'm just angry and that's what it is. When they come to me, it's like, okay, but let's, if you just let it run, it's it really is a place, it's putting yourself in a place of submission to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so gaining the courage, saying, I'm not going to hide from this anymore. I'm not going to ignore it anymore because I do not want my life processed in this way anymore. So starting there, that, hey, I want to do something different because I want a different outcome.
So acknowledging it
Yes,
and facing
acknowledging
it
it.
head on.
Yes. And then recognizing, I love to write things down. Write it down. Write down how you feel. It could be one word, it could be a sentence, it could be a paragraph. But take the time to really write down what you're feeling. That is acknowledgement expanded. Then from there, depending on what it is, some people, once they process that out and they see it in front of them, and they're like, I don't want that anymore. Then I say, then we work on that is good, but how you feel is not the root. And so I think a lot of times in therapy, we'll work on how we feel and trying to dismantle that. But the real work is in dismantling the lie or the thing that you believe that causes that. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to dig a little bit deeper. So now that you know how you feel, okay, and this is things you can do by yourself. Okay, this is how I feel about that. I'm angry. Where does that anger come from? I remember a couple of weeks ago, I asked someone, I was like, hey, do you remember that type of anger that you're feeling right now? Can you trace back the first time you felt that type of anger? And they were able to do it
Oh, wow.
that quickly. They knew exactly when they first felt that. They were 5 years old. This was an
Oh,
adult.
wow.
And they were able to go back and we were able to talk about it. So being able to isolate, if you can,
Mm-hmm.
where that comes from, and then processing through that. Now, how is it affecting me? Is it beneficial? Is it detrimental? And then deciding, okay, now that I know what that is, sometimes people can just tear it up and throw it away. I have seen people that has worked for some people. Some
Mm.
people can see it, and because they're so visual, right, tearing it destroys it and discard it, never to return. But you have to choose and make up in your mind at that moment too. I'm not going to pick it back up because there may be things that come and try to bring that out again or to remind you, because the truth is what they say, we can forgive and not forget. So
Yeah.
not always do we forget those things, but like you said, some tools that you can use just at home, writing, some people say journaling. I love to journal, but it's not something that I necessarily recommend because some people hear the word journal and it already becomes a daunting task in their mind. And so unless that person just has a propensity to, they love to journal, journaling doesn't sound like, oh, this is going to be therapeutic for me, and it adds more stress. So that's why I just say, write it down. You know,
Yeah.
write it down and work through and tear it up, ball it up, throw it away. That's one thing that works. Another thing is to look for evidence of what you believe. So if this happened at two couple of about maybe a couple of months ago, my sister, I'm going to share about her. Hopefully she'll be okay about it. But my sister, we were talking on the phone, and she said to me that she was ugly. I was like, you believe you're ugly? She's like, yes, I really believe I'm ugly. I'm unattractive and all. I said, okay, well, do you have any evidence of that? And she said, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm looking at myself and I am ugly. I said, well, Has anyone else told you that you're ugly? Because you've lived over 50 years, and usually, I mean, if some of the people tell you what they think,
Yeah,
and,
they
and
do.
they do say, has anyone ever told you that you're ugly? And she said, no, no one's ever told me that I was ugly. I say, has anyone ever said that you were beautiful? She's like, yes. How often? Quite often. Can you choose then to believe what the beholder is saying to you? Because maybe you see yourself through very critical eyes. And so she said, yeah, I can start working on that. And so she did. She started working
Yeah.
on it. And I noticed she started posting more pictures. So I'm thinking she must be feeling a bit more beautiful.
That's great.
And so, so just challenging, look for evidence of what you're believing. And granted, Kristy, sometimes the evidence is there that supports what we believe. But then what happens is that may be true, but can we change it by changing our belief? And oftentimes the answer is yes.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So if there was just, say someone wanted to start this work and overwhelming, where do I start? What do I do? I know you said, the courage to acknowledge it. Would that be the first step that you would have them take if they were like, I just one small thing I could work on this week to improve my mindset?
One small thing, if it was one small thing that I would encourage someone to, if they know that if they've acknowledged, hey, I don't feel good, whether it's they don't feel good physically or they don't feel good physically. The very first step is deciding that you want to feel different. That is really where it all begins. Like you said, right here, it starts with a decision.
Do you think that they need to tell someone else that decision, or do you think that can be an internal personal thing? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it depends on who that person is that they may want to tell. I do believe that having support while endeavoring to make these types of life changing decisions are very helpful. But in the event that you know that your circle or those who are around you are not very supportive, then I would actually encourage them not to share. I do believe that there are in certain situations you protect certain things so
Mm,
that it's not attacked before it can blossom. It's kind of like as much as we anticipate a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, we know that if we cut that open too soon, then the butterfly is not formed and it will not fly if it survives. So you want to, when that decision is made, care for that decision. Like you can actually, if you want to write down the decision or if you form it in your mind, but protect it and only
yeah,
share it with those that you know will hold it safe and sacred like you do.
good advice. Yeah. So I always ask my guests if there's one additional thing, one item of wisdom that you would share with them about this topic, something that we haven't discussed yet. Is there something that you would want to leave them with?
I think we didn't really discuss it, but you mentioned it. And that is, it's not too late. If you are hearing this, if you are seeing this, it's not too late to change. You have breath in your body, you can hear. There is opportunity. I live by opportunity, gratitude and opportunity. Be grateful and see what's before you. Be creative and know that tomorrow does not have to look exactly like today. Because guess what? In fact, it won't.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who has really had a real Groundhog's Day where tomorrow is exactly like the day before. So, in knowing that, that means that it can be better, it can be improved, and that there's opportunity.
That's great wisdom and great advice. And I appreciate everything that you shared with us today. Thank you so much for being on this episode.
Mhm.
And I look forward to all of the audience being able to get your wisdom as well.
I am grateful for you today, Christy. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak with you and to share with your audience. And of course, if anyone has further questions or would like some more information, I'm always happy to share.
How would they find you?
I am on different platforms. Well, of course, so I'm still an old school kind of girl. So you can definitely find me on Facebook. That's my name, Yamaceeta Thompson. I'm on LinkedIn as Yamaceeta Thompson, but also on Instagram, Mountain of Hope.
Oh, okay.
There at Mountain of Hope, and each beat counts. The email always works too. You can email me at Yama at mountainofhope.live. Live.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.